After 7 years working cruise ships, the question I get asked most is which cruise line is best for seniors over 60? Most people asking that question are about to make an expensive mistake. They're choosing based on price or a friend's recommendation, without knowing that certain cruise lines are genuinely unsuitable for older travelers. Today I'm sharing what I personally observed working across 7 different lines and naming exactly what to avoid and why. If you're over 60 and planning a cruise, hit subscribe right now. I share insider information like this every single week. Let me start by saying something important. I'm not here to trash any cruise line. Every line has passionate fans and happy customers. But the reality is that cruise lines are designed with a specific type of traveler in mind. And when a senior over 60 boards a ship that was built and programmed for a completely different demographic, the mismatch can ruin an expensive vacation. I watched it happen regularly, and I watched it break people's hearts because they'd saved for months or even years for a trip that turned out to be wrong for them in ways nobody had warned them about. So let's talk about what actually matters when you're over 60 and which types of lines consistently failed to deliver on those things. First, let me explain what seniors over 60 actually need from a cruise line. You need manageable ship size so you're not walking half a mile to get from your cabin to dinner. You need quiet spaces that aren't overwhelmed by pounding music at all hours. You need excellent medical facilities and staff because emergencies happen, and you want to be prepared. You need accessible design for passengers with mobility challenges because mobility concerns are real and common, and most cruise lines handle them very differently from each other. You need dining that feels civilized rather than frantic, and you need a passenger demographic that reflects your own stage of life, because spending a week surrounded exclusively by 25-year-olds doing belly flop contests is not what most 65-year-olds had in mind when they saved up for their dream vacation. When all of those factors align, a cruise for a senior traveler can be one of the most wonderful experiences imaginable. When they don't align, it can feel like a very expensive mistake. Now let's talk about the cruise lines and types of ships that consistently struggle to deliver these things for older travelers. The first category I need to address, honestly, is the mega ship party lines. These are the cruise lines that have built their brand entirely around scale, spectacle, and entertainment aimed squarely at families with young children and groups of young adults looking for a floating resort or nightclub experience. I worked on ships in this category, and I watched the pattern every single sailing. Seniors over 60 would board with excitement, find their cabin a 15-minute walk from any meaningful amenity, discover that the main pool area runs at concert-level volume from 10 in the morning until midnight, wait 45 minutes for a table at the one restaurant they could actually find, and by day 3, they were spending most of their time in their cabin wondering why they'd paid so much money for something so exhausting. The corridors on these ships can stretch 300 meters from end to end. If you have any knee issues, hip problems, or if walking long distances causes fatigue, navigating a 5,000-passenger ship several times a day will wear you down faster than you can imagine. I saw seniors rent mobility scooters on day 2 simply because the ship was too large to navigate comfortably on foot, which they hadn't planned for and which added both unexpected expense and a sense of defeat to what was supposed to be a holiday. If a cruise line's marketing focuses heavily on water slides, roller coasters at sea, bumper cars, surf simulators, and entertainment designed for teenagers, that is a strong signal that the ship's design priorities do not align with what a 65-year-old traveler actually needs. The entertainment might be impressive, the ship might be genuinely beautiful, but the experience of living on that ship for 7 to 14 days as an older traveler is a very different thing from what the promotional photos suggest. I spoke to dozens of senior passengers on these ships over the years who said the same thing. It looked amazing in the brochure, but actually being here is overwhelming. Let me tell you about the noise issue specifically, because this surprised even me when I first started working on larger, party-oriented ships. The nighttime entertainment venues on these ships often share walls, ceilings, or ventilation systems with cabin areas. I worked on a ship where the cabin section directly above the main entertainment deck would vibrate noticeably until 1 or 2 in the morning on busy nights. Passengers in those cabins complained constantly, and the standard response from guest services was essentially that the entertainment was a scheduled feature of the sailing and there was nothing to be done about it. If you're over 60 and you value your sleep, and most people over 60 absolutely do, a ship where the party doesn't stop until 2 in the morning is not the right environment. And here's the thing about cabin selection on mega ships. The quiet cabins are harder to identify in advance because the ship design is so complex that even the booking staff sometimes can't accurately tell you which areas are genuinely noise-free. What looks like a good cabin on the deck plan might be directly above a nightclub you didn't know was there. Now let me talk about a category that catches a lot of senior cruisers off guard: the repositioning and budget itinerary sailings on mainstream lines that fill their ships with bachelor parties, college spring break groups, and large youth travel organizations. The same cruise line can operate very differently depending on the sailing date. A 7-night Caribbean itinerary in March on certain mainstream lines will be heavily populated with spring break groups. The bars will be chaotic by early afternoon. The pool areas will be nearly impassable. The dining room will feel more like a cafeteria during rush hour than a restaurant experience worth savoring. Seniors who've sailed the same line in October and had a lovely, relaxed experience are sometimes completely blindsided by how different the March sailing feels. The ship is the same. The crew is the same. But the passenger mix transforms the entire atmosphere. When you're booking, ask your travel agent or the cruise line directly about the typical passenger demographic for your specific sailing date. A good travel agent who specializes in cruises for older travelers will know exactly which sailings to avoid and which dates tend to attract a more mature demographic. Here's something I observed consistently across lines that position themselves as value or budget options. These lines often reduce their service ratios, meaning fewer crew members per passenger to keep their pricing competitive. For a 25-year-old who's perfectly happy grabbing his own food at a crowded buffet and doesn't need much assistance, that lower service level is fine. For a 68-year-old woman traveling alone who needs someone to carry her tray, who has questions about accessibility at the next port, who wants to request a specific type of pillow to support her back, or who needs help navigating the medical center, reduced service ratios create a noticeably worse experience that can shade the entire cruise. I worked on ships where the cabin steward was responsible for 22 cabins, which meant the service each passenger received was necessarily limited, transactional, and rushed. I also worked on ships where the steward covered 12 cabins and had genuine time to know each guest, remember their preferences, and provide the kind of personalized care that makes a cruise feel special. That difference is enormous when you're an older traveler with specific needs and expectations. Let's talk about medical facilities now, because this is where the stakes become genuinely serious. Cruise ship medical centers are not created equal, and this is something almost nobody discusses openly when recommending cruise lines. Some ships have excellent facilities with board-certified physicians, cardiologists on call, advanced diagnostic equipment, and the capability to handle a wide range of medical situations competently and quickly. Others have very basic facilities staffed by a single doctor and one nurse, equipped to handle minor issues but not much beyond stabilization before evacuation. For a 30-year-old in good health, the difference between these two levels of care barely matters. For a 65-year-old with a heart condition, diabetes, a history of stroke, or any other chronic health issue, the quality of the onboard medical center is a critical factor in cruise line selection that deserves serious research. I worked on ships where I watched the medical team handle genuinely serious cardiac and respiratory situations with impressive competence and equipment that actually made a difference in outcomes. I also worked on ships where the medical center was essentially a well-equipped first aid station that was honest about its limitations. Premium and luxury cruise lines generally invest significantly more heavily in medical facilities and physician credentials. Some budget lines operate with minimal medical infrastructure and rely heavily on shore-based emergency services and costly evacuations when serious situations arise. Before you book any cruise as a senior traveler, research the specific ship's medical capabilities. Call the cruise line and ask directly about the onboard physician credentials, the diagnostic equipment available, and the protocol for cardiac emergencies. The answer you get will tell you a great deal about how seriously that line takes the health needs of its passengers. Now I want to address something that sounds minor but genuinely affects daily quality of life over a week or longer: dining pace and structure. Some cruise lines, particularly the larger party-oriented ships and the more budget-focused lines, have moved heavily toward a casual, anytime, help-yourself dining model. The main dining room might have limited hours. Specialty restaurants might be the only truly civilized sit-down experience, and they cost extra on top of what you've already paid. The buffet runs almost continuously, but the quality and organization vary wildly depending on how busy the ship is. For passengers over 60 who enjoy a proper dinner at a proper time, with a server who knows their name and their preferences, this model feels rushed, impersonal, and exhausting. Contrast this with more traditional cruise lines that still maintain structured main dining, with the same table, the same server, and often the same dining companions each evening. That consistency creates connection and comfort that older travelers consistently value. I watched seniors on traditional dining ships look forward to dinner the way you look forward to a dinner party at a friend's home. I watched seniors on freestyle ships avoid the dining room entirely after day 2, because the chaos and uncertainty of the experience wasn't worth it. Let me also address the tender port issue directly, because it affects seniors disproportionately, and most people don't think about it until they're standing on the ship watching the tender boats and realizing they're not sure they can safely board. Many popular destinations require passengers to take a small boat from the ship to shore because the ship can't dock at a pier. Getting in and out of a tender boat requires stepping over a gap between the boat and the ship platform, sometimes while both are moving with the swell. It requires balance, confidence, and physical capability. For passengers with mobility challenges, knee replacements, hip replacements, or significant balance issues, tender ports can be genuinely dangerous and sometimes inaccessible. Some cruise lines have itineraries heavily weighted with tender ports. Others favor dock-accessible destinations wherever possible. And within lines that do tender, the assistance protocols vary enormously. Some lines station multiple crew members at every tender transfer to help passengers board and disembark safely. Others offer minimal assistance and essentially tell you that if you can't board the tender independently, you'll need to stay on the ship. If you're over 60 and you have any mobility concerns at all, research how many tender ports are in your specific itinerary and ask the cruise line what their accessibility support looks like at those ports. The answer matters more than most people realize until they're in that situation. So what do I actually recommend for seniors over 60 based on 7 years of watching this play out? The lines and ship categories that consistently delivered better experiences for older travelers were those focused on premium and luxury travel. Smaller ships with 3,000 passengers or fewer where nothing is a 15-minute walk. Higher service ratios where the crew has time to actually know you. Quieter environments where a sea day feels genuinely restful rather than like navigating a shopping mall on the last Saturday before Christmas. Sophisticated entertainment programmed for adults who appreciate music, theater, and conversation. Excellent food prepared with care rather than volume. Strong medical facilities with qualified physicians. And a passenger demographic that skews older because the line's entire experience has been designed to appeal to mature travelers. River cruises also consistently earn high marks from senior travelers for similar reasons. The ships are intimate. The destinations are culturally rich, and the entire pace of the experience is calibrated for people who want depth and comfort rather than spectacle and stimulation. The honest truth about cruise lines for seniors comes down to this: the cheapest option is almost never the best option when you're over 60. The extra money spent on a line with better service, smaller ships, quieter environments, and stronger medical facilities is money you will not regret spending. Research specifically, ask specific questions, read reviews from other senior travelers rather than from the general cruise audience, and don't let anyone tell you that all cruise lines are basically the same. You've worked hard your entire life. You deserve a vacation on a ship that was designed with you in mind. Like and subscribe for more insider cruise secrets every week.